You need to do the thumbs up. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to another program, Albayan live on the 20th night of Ramadan. We are live on 107.9 FM in Sydney and all the other streaming avenues and services, alhamdulillah. We are joined together by our dear guests today, Mohamad, Fenj. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
I'm half asleep, that's why.
As long as you say you don't say Fenj, I'm fine with everything else. It happens so often.
SubhanAllah. And for those that we want to introduce our dear brother. He's into mental health, counselling, and drug rehabilitation.
Amongst other things, yes. Alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah. So you see the other side of the world, to say, the dark side. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So, Jazakallah khair, yani, for inviting us today. I think first and foremost, I'm a human being. It's important to acknowledge that. And I watched parts of last week's episode. The brothers were saying how, subhanAllah, anyone can be afflicted at any time with anything. And that rings so very true to me, subhanAllah, Yes, I work in mental health and drug and alcohol recovery, from personal experience, and also, learning a lot about it throughout my journey, and throughout establishing a service that's specifically designed to support the brothers in that space. But subhanAllah, I was praying Taraweeh, and I couldn't help but think about. So today's topic, we are going to be covering psycho-spirituality, yeah. So we are going to be talking about some sort of psycho-spirituality. What is it? How do you even practice it? How do you grow spiritually? Is it by how far you can levitate on? Not really. So we're talking about different elements of it. But subhanAllah, as I was saying before, when I was praying Taraweeh, I remember the khutbah a few weeks ago when you were talking about everything has a process. So, but inshallah, before I get into the nitty gritty of it, I'm a human being first and foremost, and I'm a student of knowledge and learning from all the avenues and aspects, I guess, of interactions.
Allah make it easy, Ya Rab. Halil, you've titled psycho. So you just look at that word, and spirituality, we look at that word. So when we mention psycho, we translate that someone that's majnoon, right? Crazy.
Yeah.
But for medical terminology, you're talking like the psychic, like the mind.
Correct. So for definition's sake, if you look up what psycho-spirituality means, it's the integration of psychology and spirituality. It's mishmashing the two aspects of self. So obviously we know psychology is the mind and emotion, but it's always been dealt with separately to the spirit side of our existence, sort of the spiritual aspect of ourselves. So what psycho-spirituality does is it's an integration between the two, between the mind, the emotion, and the spiritual self. So the spiritual side of things is where you come up with reason and purpose and meaning of why you have a thought, then you have an emotion behind it, and you behave or respond in a certain way. I like to describe the psycho-spiritual concepts as it's almost like your go-to to balance out, should I be angry in this situation? Is it better if I'm patient in this situation? How do I manage my own thought process in this scenario or this situation, right? So, and it's a very interesting concept, subhanAllah, to help understand or just deal with life in general. It helps you so much get a better understanding of how to deal with life in general.
SubhanAllah. So, in brief, you're talking about between. I want to underline, when we talk about mind, we're not talking about the brain. When we talk about the mind, we're talking about a group of, we're talking about the heart, the emotion, the thoughts, the ideas, the lust, the desires. You're looking at all that type of stuff. So generally what we're saying is that you're not just studying the brain, you're studying the effects of it in the practical sense. Someone getting upset, someone getting sad. Like, for example, someone would say, like, for science, we have to be able to prove something, right? Science is about proving. But if we say, okay, so in regards to the brain, for example, how does it react in a certain way, and how does it do certain things? How does someone say, when he, for example, he gets divorced, he says, my heart is broken? How does that explain? How does that explain? So we're not here just talking about the actual physical brain in flesh. We're talking mind, which is a connection between obviously the brain, the heart, and the spirit, as we know, the ruh, and how they're all links
Correct.
together. And then so when you're talking about the psychic, you're talking about obviously the mind and spirituality, how they merge into pretty much your body, your soul, your mind, and your belief and your Islam, how they're all tied together.
Correct. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the points I was going to talk about, is that the heart, they've recently discovered, has 40,000 neurons. Those 40,000 neurons are in constant communication with the brain that has 86 billion neurons. And the body has 50 trillion cells or somewhere along that number. So those 40,000 neurons that are in the heart, they've discovered that the heart is not just a physiological pump for the blood, distributes, and it has, that communicates with the brain. So they say that the heart is the CEO of the body and the way it interacts. The mind is the processing tool, so it's the processor, the CPU, and the obviously your power source is your food. And this is what I was going to say earlier about when you talk about processes. You gave a khutbah a few weeks ago about everything has a process and preparation and a process. Even just us talking together now. Forget all the technology side of it. I'm, if you like, exerting energy into sound that's vibrating and transitioning through light to get to your brain, to then make, or before it gets to your ear, then it makes a sound and it goes into your brain, something you've heard before, you've analyzed it, you know what it means, you've reflected on it, and you're ready to respond. This is a process of understanding. There needs to be a process before understanding. And for me to be able to actually do that, I need to get the power source, which is from the Creator, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is, if the cloud doesn't rain, the crops won't grow, the animals will die, we will all die. So that power source, this is why the spiritual aspect of self is so important to understand why we even exist. It gives you a better understanding of life. So even this power source, the power supply that we're getting, is food and water and air, basically. And these three things, without our own Creator, who created this physiological creation with a soul and a spirit and a ruh and a heart, but also created its power source or power supply from the natural world to sustain us. So, as I said, so the heart's the CEO, and that's why we know in the Quran, the shaitan yuwaswisu fi sudur nas, he whispers to the hearts of the people, because if the CEO and the board decide and the decision, the brain is just going to process this and is going to steer you towards it. So your analytical brain, your risk analysis, all of this comes from the brain. But if your heart desires something, you want something, everything conforms. So you're hungry, you're starving, you want to eat, and you're on your way to get food. Everything is going to conform. Your mind, you're risk-taking, you're in a hurry, you're hungry. Everything is all about what the heart wants and what the body wants, needs, in fact, which is food. So that's why it's so important to understand the holistic aspect of our existence.
Other people have to understand the mind doesn't function on its own. It has the heart, which has, we say, the distinguisher. It makes the decisions either right or wrong. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He is between a man and his heart. يَحُولَ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. Allah is between a man and his heart. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can turn the heart, you know what I mean, either towards good or bad. And if we understood that, what we would understand is, consider the mind like, as we know, AI now is popular, right? But it doesn't always make the right decisions, if that sort of makes sense. Sometimes it's taking the easy way out. It has no emotion, it has no sympathy. So, for example, if you were to have a cup of water and your children would be around you and they're thirsty, if your mind was working without your heart, it would think survival. You'll drink the water and you will not consider helping anyone. But that's where the heart comes in and brings that sympathy, brings that love, and says, look after your family. So in a way that the mind, yeah, like you said, it's the processor, but it's the heart that directs it into what to process.
You got kind-hearted, sweet-hearted, sweetheart, soft-hearted. All of these descriptive, I guess, terminologies is describing the heart.
And when someone gets hurt, like again, I bring it back in a relationship, you don't hear the terminology, "Oh, my brain is broken." Like,
although they do break down.
Yeah, my heart is broken. You know what I mean? And I think the studies have shown that neurons of the brain also exist as cell. They found them. They exist in the heart, which shows that the heart has a form of transmitting thoughts and ideas
and understanding. Fiqh. Yeah.
And even from the scholars of Islam, they in agreement, agreed upon, because we look at the vast hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, plus all the verses, that the heart controls the body. Now a person will say, "Hey, wait a minute, I've got a question here. Someone has a heart transplant and that heart is moved." Yeah, but you have to understand the heart is connected to a ruh, to a spirit, and there is a physical heart, there's also a spiritual heart too. So yeah, if you put the heart into an evil person, does that make him automatically he's going to be going to be good? We say it doesn't necessarily work. You know what I mean? In that way, it's in a way it is. We can tell it is symbolic, but there's a connection between what we said, the three, and that even some people that subhanallah say that people that do have heart transplants have found themselves having different habits, different traits. That's a whole different thing. But in general, right, if that's who you are, no matter if you change the heart and move it, it's not going to change your soul. You know what I mean? Because again, you have the soul, you have the good soul. So nafs al-mutma'inna, nafs al-lawama, nafs al-amaratu bis-su'. So still, there's a connection between, you know what I mean, those three. But in a sense where the heart does control the body, and we know, how do we know this even further, is that alam nashrah laka sadrak, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ, we cleansed your heart. And this physically happened when the Prophet ﷺ was a child, and he removed the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, the angel Jibreel, and he cleansed it and he washed it, and the Prophet ﷺ had a mark of the scar of that occurrence. So we know that the heart has, like they say, that it has darkness, that it's physical. If that wasn't the case, it did not have to be removed and washed by in Zamzam, in a vessel by the angel Jibreel. So yeah, the physical heart is important. Just to give us a little bit of an idea where the connection between the soul, the mind and the heart, when things start to go wrong. So what I mean by that is, generally the body can sense when they are not, like the computer screen or the speakers or whatever, if the processor is not right, these start to glitch. And we also know the hadith where the body cries out to the heart and says, be straight, because if you're straight, we're straight. And like it's pleading with the heart, and the hands complain on the day of judgment, saying, "Ya Allah, look what he did to me, and he made me do this, and he made me do that." So with that, like, what are the signs? And this goes into like the addiction that we want to obviously get into, the evil, the haram, the sin, all these things. What are the signs that glitches are happening? There's a problem between the spirituality, the mind, the heart, that there is an issue here.
Look, I think it's important to note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think it was in the talk from last week, about the bala, about the tests. Allah said, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. And then لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ, so the verses are there where it's a condition for us as human beings to get tested. Where we're going to get tested, that's obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge, infinite knowledge. So in terms of if you look at it like a 4-cylinder car, 5-cylinder, 6-cylinder car, they work in a balance. So the cylinders go up and down. You have the steering wheel. You need to have air in the tires for the car to go. You also need to have the healthy steering wheel. You need to have fuel in the motor. You need to have oil. So all of these things collectively need to come together for the car to have a forward momentum generation. You need also to have brakes. You need to have windows for when high winds, and so there's a lot of. It's complex. It's not simple. Subhanallah, for a vehicle manufacturer, just to make a car go forward, but take into consideration all the elements, the external elements as well as the internal elements, and also consider the things that can go wrong in life. And so when you have to consider all of these things and then put these protective measures and barriers in place, it's complex. It's not something simple. So I think for us, there isn't one answer. It's almost like you go through a journey in life, and then you get tested, and you address the test, and you get tested again. Obviously, how and where, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows. Like for me, my test could be in a certain area that's easier for other people, and it could be harder for someone else, in different areas. So, and Subhanallah, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is the solution is there. He's given us the solution. And that's why the psycho-spiritual aspect of self is so important, because if you're constantly going back to that, then it's almost like constantly going back to your factory reset on your PC, it's almost like taking the car back and they're putting up on the hoist, and going back to the factory reset. Because I often say, well, how do you find your psycho-spirituality? How do you assess that? How do you and I often say, if you want to grow spiritually, you have to challenge yourself in a spiritual challenge. Just like if you want to grow physically, you need to challenge your muscles, and you want to train so you can grow physically. So how do you do a physical challenge? Obviously, you go to the gym. How do you do a spiritual challenge? What is a spiritual concept? Spiritual concept is, if you get angry, you control your anger. It's not lying. It's being just in a situation where he's your friend and he's not your friend, but your friend's in the wrong, but you have to be fair. So you take the side of the person that's not your friend. That's a spiritual challenge. So these concepts challenge you spiritually, and that's how we grow spiritually. Now, Allah tests in ways, and obviously tests aren't something easy. You don't give a student a test that he's going to know the answers. It's not really a test. So people are different. So the challenge is different. And we might not always have the answer. The challenge could be to see, are you going to be accepting of the qadr of Allah? That's the whole test. How do you know? Allahu A'lam. The test is not necessarily about whether you're going to win or lose this, or whether you're going to gain something in life or not. Allah wants to test how's your belief in His decree. Where's that at? We don't know. So where that connection, like, you are best to submit your will and your understanding to the Creator. As I said before, He's your power supply. Really, all the power and all the source of it, that's where it comes from. It could take a small split second of one drop of blood to go in the wrong area, and khalas, for the rest of your life, you go back to being a child. Subhanallah. We don't pay attention here to these important concepts, I think. And that's where our lack of understanding, then, we turn to drugs, we turn to the quick solutions in life, because they're the coping mechanisms. That's not the problem. The problem is not the drugs and alcohol. They become the solution to the core problem, but we're just not looking to where the problem is. And I'm in this every day. We are in a constant and consistent pathway to bettering the self, finding out where the flaws are, and trying to address them in a realistic fashion.
So what do you think the most common issue people are falling into these days?
I think,
like, would you say, like, for example, if someone starts taking pain medication, and then it becomes taking stronger and stronger, for example, had a work injury, and then gets hooked on certain medications like codeine or whatever, then that then it becomes harder for him to get, and then that moves over towards drugs. Is that
very common?
Is that like, that's what I'm trying to say? Like, what is the most common pathway that you find people heading towards destruction of them? Because I've always said, no one's gonna destroy you're more statistically in a position to destroy yourself and harm yourself than someone else.
Correct. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you put all these security cameras, gates, whatever, to protect yourself from people robbing you and all this stuff. But the worst enemy is the one you see in the mirror every day. You keep your money in the bank, you keep it in safes, you keep it whatever to keep it protected. But the only one that will destroy that money is yourself, by gambling, by chucking on haram, whatever. So really, and you're putting all this effort, but you as a human is a very destructive creature or creation to say. So what, like I said, what is the common pathway that people find themselves that lead them towards destruction?
Look, there is a general kind of chronological process to someone become addicted, if you like. And usually starts with curiosity. Then it becomes to experimental. So you're curious about a substance, you've experienced it, you tried it, and then it worked for you. And if your brain registers it as a good experience, then it stores it as a good experience. And every time you're curious, you will go to that experience. And then, so from curiosity, it goes to experimental. So you start experimenting with this substance. Then it becomes recreational. Then you kind of use it recreationally because you were curious about it. You experimented with it. Your brain registers it. Okay, it's a good experience. Then you become, use it recreationally. Then it becomes functional. And functional is where the medical comes in as well. So sometimes, my personal experience with my knee operations 10 years ago to 15 years ago now. And medical comes along with the functional. Then after the functional, obviously, it takes a while. Then your tolerance starts to build to the substance, so you would need more of it to feel the same effect. And then your dependence builds. And then when you don't have it, you have withdrawal symptoms. So they're the general steps. But there isn't any specific. Someone could start at any given moment because of a trauma or a car accident or an injury. But the if your brain registers it as a good experience, that's why some people are prone to different substances. So some people are prone to alcohol versus some people are prone to stimulants. Some people are to opioids or benzodiazepines. It depends on how people respond and react to it. But if your brain registers it as a good experience, it will say, okay, if I have a psychosocial problem, if I have a psychospiritual dilemma, if I have a medical issue, if I have, then I know this substance is going to get rid of it. And your brain registers it as such. So it could be around trauma, it could be around depression, events, great events that happened in your life. But if your brain hasn't experienced those experiences, then it's not going to necessarily go there as a default, But if it has experienced those emotions and feelings from those substances, then when a trauma happens, as I said, when all of these things occur, then your brain remembers that experience as a good experience and uses it as a resource. And then the more you do that, the more it becomes imprinted in your brain that if I have this, that's the solution. If I have that, that's the solution. And if you're someone like myself, has this addictive nature and someone that needs to be constantly stimulated, then you kind of gravitate towards these quick solutions and then not really putting a gap between yourself and that. So, you said earlier, إن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه. And if you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart, or you are on the path to constantly inviting Allah to your life, into your heart, that's the best and the most, from my perspective, for a believer in his Creator, that's the most effective kind of path to that. But to say, as a Muslim you're not prone to it, that's not a correct statement. We're all human beings at the end of the day, and Allah tests in different ways.
I think we have signs all around us. I don't want to give this example. I hate giving this example, but it's the only example that I can think about. When someone's training a dog, there's a concept of trick and reward.
Yep.
And that's all to stimulate something in the dog's mind, that if he acts in a certain way, he'll be rewarded in a certain way. And so those treats that are given lets off whatever endorphins, whatever this dog's got in his head, where he will act in a good way to receive a good reward. But let's say, for example, I can muck around with that. So every time the dog bites someone, I give him a reward. Right? Then the pleasure of biting gets associated with a reward system, a treat. So they consider biting to be something that's good for them. On the flip side, I can also make fear into the dog. Every time I'll give him a rose, if he takes it, I hit him, for example. And if I keep doing that, whenever that dog sees a rose or comes near a rose, he's going to associate pain with looking at that rose, even the color red in general. He will start to have fear. So the brain can be rewired
Definitely.
in
Yeah.
a sense. I don't like to compare brothers to dogs, but I'm just giving that example because dog training and stuff like that is something that they focus on a lot, just as an example to understand. And likewise with a human. So you find people that have phobias, and when they sit with a therapist, the first thing the therapist will do is say, okay, you're scared of, cats, or you're scared of birds. What happened in your childhood? I had a bird, and one day I found him dead in my cage, for example. You know what I mean? There was a dog that bit me. Or, when I used to get punished, and this is fact, that when kids used to get punished, they used to have like the naughty corner, right? And that naughty corner was painted yellow. So every time they got punished, they got put into the naughty corner. And so they associate the color yellow with
Punishment.
punishment. So you find like they won't wear yellow clothes, or they you know what I mean? There's some type of association, and that's real. And a lot of people, therapists, they try to rewire that in people.
CBT, we call it. Yeah.
Yeah, so some people are like, come, touch. Yeah, here's a yellow shirt. Try to wear it.
Yeah.
Try to touch it. Like they try to reprogram it. And that's why sometimes people you find, this guy's weird, bro. He doesn't eat mangoes. What's wrong with the bloke? You know what I mean? Or sometimes you find people acting in strange ways, like they see a cat and they run. You know, what's wrong with this guy?
SubhanAllah, a lot of the time they might not even be aware of some of these traits. So the therapist, like they call that exposure therapy, when they expose them gently to the trauma, and then they explore where it's come from.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They even said, like, to narrow it down, like they even said a lot of us are scared of cockroaches because the reaction that we saw other people react when they saw a cockroach. Have you ever heard of a cockroach biting someone, eating someone, hurting someone, stinging someone? They don't even have
Actually very clean, yeah.
Do they have any teeth? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even if we see it from a distance, we go absolutely insane. It's because us growing up as kids, we were watching our parents doing exactly the same thing.
SubhanAllah.
You know
Do you know the only two things, the phobias that we were born with as a fitrah? Do you know what they are?
I think snakes and...
No.
scorpions?
So heights and loud noises. They're the only two fears that are legit we're born with it in the fitrah.
Yeah.
That's it. The rest of the phobias and fears, they've come from external, the nurture aspect of self. The nature aspect of the human being is just loud noises that we're scared of, and like in the fitrah.
Babies always cry from...
and heights.
Oh.
So, subhanAllah. But on the snake thing, this is the power of perception. There's a guy called Professor Bruce Lipton and he's he's great to listen to. And he talks about the power of perception and how you perceive the world has a profound impact on your biological and your responses to the world. And he gives an example, like a beautiful example. Say I'm scared of snakes and I see a snake. My biological responses to that fear and risk, blood's going to pump faster. The skin gets a bit different. I know from your medical, you'll understand better on biologically how your body responds to a threat. Your blood, I think, thins so it can bump.
Adrenaline, everything kicks in.
Yeah, to go to the muscles faster. So all of these responses happen if I'm scared of a snake and I see a snake. But yeah, what happens when a snake catcher sees a snake? The threat's the same. The threat of the snake is the same. The risk is the same. But a snake catcher is now trained with how to deal with that risk. So the biological responses, based on what? Based on his perception of the threat. The biological responses change now. Over time, the biological responses to the threat change. Why? Because of the power of perception. So Bruce Lipton talks about a lot of this concept, and this is why I bring that to Islam, and I say this is why the power of perception in Islam is so profound, is so important, because when you understand the concept of sabr, when you understand the concept of the decree of Allah, when you understand the concept of ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير. Inshallah, we'll pull up the ayah and put the tafsir for لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما أتاكم. I'm not going to go into but this is a beautiful ayah. It talks about any calamity that happens on earth. the qadr of Allah. It's easier of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written it. Why? So that you don't get too pleased with what Allah has given you, and you don't get too upset with what you've missed out on. So Allah's teaching us how to be happy with the qadr of Allah. So He's teaching us where the perception needs to be around life. So this perception is such an important tool that I think we lack understanding of how important it is to adopt and adapt in terms of understanding things that happen in life. So this snake catcher, it's the same threat. It's the same threat, but the way he handles it, the way he understands the risk, and the way he perceives life and perceive what's coming at him is handled a little bit different. And he's got the tools to manage that risk a little bit better. That doesn't mean
Doesn't mean he hasn't been bitten before. He's been bitten.
he hasn't been scared before.
Yeah.
That's right. And these are the tests, And we're constantly getting tested, and Allah tests. Yeah, so...
I think with that and everything that you're saying, there's one fault in a human. Like we have faults. Yeah, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانَ ضَعِيفًا. We have many faults. Curiosity was one of them that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Curiosity is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Adam alayhi salam, وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ. Don't come near it. It doesn't say don't eat from it. So don't come near it. Look, stay away. Because what's going to happen, if you're with a group of guys camping and you want to drive them insane, right? Tell them, listen, I'm just letting you know. See that tree over there? And go point to a tree on top of a mountain. I'm just letting you go, guys. I'm not going to tell you why, but see that tree up there? Don't go near it. Watch the instinct of the son of Adam.
Curious, yes, subhanAllah.
They're going to start talking with each other. How come he doesn't want to go? What's wrong with that tree? Next day, they're going to look up at that tree and say, it looks like a normal tree. What's so... Think about this tree, and I guarantee they'll start putting a plan together to go and see what's in that tree. Maybe there's nothing there. Yeah. That's human beings. We're curious, right? The second thing I find, and again we find this through the Quran and Sunnah, is the human being can never know his limit, and that's something very, very important. That's why alcohol, fashtanibu. That's why gambling, fashtanibu, because we don't know when we're pushing ourselves too far. And you find, for example, people, they slip off a cliff. What happened? They're trying to take a photo. Why? Because you didn't know your limits. You didn't know how far. A person's driving 200 k's down the highway, smashes into a telegraph pole, loses control. Why? Because you're trying to
push the boundaries. Yeah.
Every person, I can do a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. He'll keep on trying to. And if we're going to relate it to drugs, I'll pop one pill. Nothing. 1.5. You know what? Make it 2. Nothing happened. 3. You know what? He would not stop until that pill stops him. Do you know what I mean? And that's why when the Christians would say, our Bible says drink but don't get drunk, right? And we say to them, but drinking alters your perception. So how do you know
whether you're gonna get drunk or not?
But that's the concept. How do you know how sick you're getting? How do you know how much poison is entering your body? Or even people climbing mountains. This is why I don't understand. They end up dying on Mount Everest because they're running out of oxygen. Now, didn't you know at one point that you're having problems breathing? Right? All the ones, Allah, the cave divers. Yeah. If you want to get claustrophobic, watch the ones that dive in caves. Right? It's called depression, decompression, sickness, and all this stuff. So they come out too fast, or they go down too much. So one guy, he had like 3 hours of air or something like that, and he passed the midway point. So he's got like 1.5 hours down, 1.5 hours up. So let's say, for example, right? They worked it out. But he got into his head that he just wanted to go down a bit lower. So he went down another 100 meters. On the way up, it was 100 meters short getting to the top. And he ended up dying. And you know what I mean? It's like, and everyone wants to push the limits. And the human being, unfortunately, he doesn't know his limits. He doesn't know Allah's limits. Tilka hududullah. Allah has put limits in the deen. But also and you look at all the muharramat.
Dhaluman jahula.
Everything. Look at all the muharramat. Everything that's haram, take what's the top shirk. That's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at everything else under that. And you'll find there's one common thing with all the muharramat. It's either Allah is protecting you from yourself or protecting you from another Muslim. Think about it. Black magic. Right? Allah's protecting you from other people. Right? Killing, zina, riba, lying, deception, stealing, like the list will just go on, and all of it
harm. It's a harm prevention framework for society. That's what I always say.
But then the question is why? Is because you, as a human, sorry to say,
we have an inclination to harm.
You don't know
Limits, subhanAllah.
Limits. Stanford experiment. You would have heard about the Stanford experiment, where they brought a group of friends and they put them in like a mock prison, right? Friends, they love each other, good mates. Half of them were guards, half of them were prisoners, and they done like a mock jail setup. And they discovered something with this experiment, because the guards started to oppress the prisoners. First it was a joke, then it got serious. Then they actually started to physically harm them. And so the man that was running the experiment, it was a bit controversial because he found it very interesting and he let the experiment go for like 10 days.
There was a movie about this, I think.
They made a movie about it.
They made a movie about it, yeah.
And what they found is, when you put again, human beings are weak. When you put a human being in a position of power and a position to oppress, most of them will oppress, even if they're their close friends. Because it's in the nature of a human to incline towards evil and oppression, to the point that they didn't realize how much damage and how much pain and suffering that they're causing people that they know. And they knew it wasn't real, but they took it as if it was real, to the point, like I said, they caused
They start oppressing
harm.
others.
So then you hear a story, a group of friends together, one of them is mucking, a group of mucking with the other guy, and one of them decides to, you know what, let's just push him down the cliff, see what happens. And they push him down the cliff. He gets hurt, breaks a leg, or ends up dying. You know what I mean? Or they push him into a river, and they're all laughing or they're giggling. What happened there? The same thing. That psychological depth. The human doesn't have foresight. That's why it doesn't have consequence of actions. And because we don't have that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to put all these restrictions for us. Because honestly, you can't trust yourself. You can't trust yourself to look after yourself. That's the reality of it. You know what I mean? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't put all these, even with food, the World Health Organization, when you look at diseases, and probably in Lebanon, you grew up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
So how would
Lebanon and South Africa.
And how would people die back in those days? You know, you would hear he died from a virus, he died from a fever, he died from malaria, right? Malaria in South Africa was a big thing. He died from a bacteria, he died from this, he died. And then all of a sudden that stopped. Now they're dying from what we call lifestyle diseases. Diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, cholesterol, blood pressure. Everyone's dying from these things. When's the last time you heard someone had a fever and died? Really? Back in Lebanon, Mom tells me, oh, you had an uncle, he died. How did he die? He had a fever. And he got a virus, he got sick. So now people are not dying from, they're dying from diseases because of the food.
Overindulging.
Why? Because the human being doesn't know when to.
So the dua, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min aynin la wa min nafsin la tashba'. Yeah, subhanallah. And you know, this is I give this example, and I like to give this example. It's just before you break your fast and you're at your extreme need, you know, you're gonna think you're gonna eat this whole table, you're gonna smash this whole table, you know, because your nafs has been deprived, right? And it wants to fulfill what it wants. So subhanallah, it's once you start giving it what it wants, it's like your nafs just wants to keep going, but your body's saying no, you know. So yeah, subhanallah. An aspect like of, obviously, you know, the ruh we only have very limited knowledge of, but it's not a physical, I guess, realm bound. So it doesn't necessarily need the food, or it's the body that needs it, and obviously the chemicals around how the food makes you feel, that, you know, you want more of it. So look at the mercy of Allah, just to maintain our existence. There's pleasure in maintaining our existence. You've got like over 1,000 taste buds, or, you know, just to maintain your existence and to utilize the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, the food that you eat, to utilize the power source. There's actually pleasure in that. To procreate, there's pleasure in that. So, but with limits, you know. But we, like you said, subhanallah, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. And the process of the nafs is obviously the first one's in Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, that the nafs that has the potential to want to do, you know, is in Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, and then the next one is in Surah Al-Qiyamah, the Al-Nafs Al-Lawwama, and Allah puts it in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Judgment Day, and you want to give reason giving, because you're being judged, so you want to give reason to this judgment. And then the last one is at the end of Surah Al-Fajr. So after you pray Fajr, at the end of Surah Al-Fajr is where you have contentment, where you can practice your nafs al-mutma'inna, if you like, or try and be content. Subhanallah.
SubhanAllah. That's the reality of human beings. Jamal is saying. Let's have a look. What has he got here? Do I have to read all these out? Just some points. Euphoria, a sense of happiness and overconfidence. We have a lot of people that are overconfident these days. Impaired judgment, poor decision making, and lack of awareness. Just mentioning some points. Slow thinking, difficulty to concentrate and problem solving, and loss of coordination. Difficulty performing tasks. So we have faults. We have a lot of, and mind you, these faults don't come because someone was, because people all have this question like, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He created us fi ahsani taqweem, we're the best stature. Yeah, you are the best stature, but don't forget, you're not in the best place. You're not in the best place. Earth is not where the human being was designed for.
Yeah,
now think about it. We have to wear clothes. We have to keep warm. We have to shelter. We can't be in the sun. We have to cook our food. We have to ripen our fruits. You know what I mean? We have to preserve our food. We have to hunt. We have to build shelters. We have to have roofs. There's so many things. It's because we weren't designed for this earth.
And I think it's one of these words that stood out, like that people are overconfident or lack of happiness, lack of contentment is a very, I think, strong word. And that's, to answer the question, I think we went on a tangent there, like I did earlier, around like one of the core issues of this is lack of contentment, searching for something else, or lack of discontentment. And this is a massive, massive trick of shaitan. The whole idea is to create a state of discontentment in the Bani Adam, or curiosity, or a state of chase. And then the human being does the rest for himself. So the shaitan's is yuwaswisu fi sudurin, that's what he likes, so he can invoke or incite something, discontentment or hubb dunya and all of this. So you start to chase. And if you've experienced that chase before, I'm telling you, it's not something that you could easily just ignore.
Yeah.
Because they say your brain can't distinguish between the real experience and an imaginary or a flashback or a memory. That the amount of dopamine that gets released is pretty much the same. So, subhanallah, you were saying about.
No, just generally, I always hammer this home because we get even I tell brothers you trip, you bump your head, you could be in a wheelchair. You remember Superman, right? What's his name? I forgot his name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, old mate now is in a wheelchair.
He ended up passing away.
Really? Yeah.
But Superman, and he was strong and athletic and everything, and he fell off a horse. SubhanAllah, and he became vegetable. It just shows how fragile.
SubhanAllah.
I don't know. Even we have Schumacher, the fastest Formula One driver and most champions, whatever, was skiing, and this guy's gone. I don't know how fast they go, 500, 600, 700 kilometers per hour, and 500 kilometers around bends and turns and whatever. And he was skiing, and he fell or he tripped when he was skiing, and he bumped his head. And till now they don't actually know exactly what his condition is, but they know he's not responsive. He doesn't talk, he doesn't write, so they assume he's a vegetable. And these are people that were driving cars faster than anyone else. And so you look like that, like you're a human being, you're very fragile, and you can harm yourself very easy. Through drugs, through alcohol, through sugar, even sugar.
Sugar, yeah.
You know what I mean? People are dying from diabetes, the cholesterol, the salts. And someone once, he made a point, he said, look, think about the creatures and what can kill you. People can be killed by a bee if they have an allergic reaction. a bee sting can kill them. A little bee. Like, you can't even feel the weight of a bee. It can kill you. I think they said one of the most venomous creatures, like octopus, like fits around your thumb or your finger.
There's a blue ring octopus,
Yeah,
I think it
that
is.
can kill you.
Yeah.
Like, subhanAllah, like, how fragile are you?
If a teaspoon of water goes in down the wrong windpipe, you'd drown. That's how vulnerable we are. SubhanAllah.
So the only thing is that, yes, Allah's there and the angels there to protection. But we always say there's no cure for stupidity. And it's fortunate to say that, like, a lot of people, like, we find death comes to them, yes, for Allah's qadar, but the action is through curiosity, stupidity. They see a wave, yeah, I want to surf it. They get caught in a rip. We hear this all the time. You know what I mean? Habibi, you're not a fish.
Mm.
You're not designed for the ocean. You know what I mean? I don't think there's been any reports of Prophet swam in the ocean, or even seen the ocean. You know what I mean? So, yes, it's good to go for a dip, but don't challenge the waves.
Mm.
And ever think that the waves are there to stop you?
But what are some things? How can we work on this? How can we, keep ourselves in check and humbling ourselves? Now I want to ask you some questions. What are some strategies to try and keep yourself in check? Of course, salah and submitting to your Creator, but challenging yourself. How do you?
I always have the thing, if the Prophet ﷺ was with me right now, would he tell me go ahead? I always have that, and I always tell brothers that. If the Prophet ﷺ was with you, like one of the brothers, he cut his leg because he was renovating his house, and he had a window, and they go, oh, kick in the glass, right? It's a window they've taken out. It's fun. Just go kick in the glass. As he kicked it, it made like a sharp triangle, and boom, stabbed there. As his foot went in, cut his leg off to the hospital. I said, if you were standing with the Prophet ﷺ and you said, Rasulullah, I'm going to break that glass, would he give you the go ahead? Would you even ask the Prophet ﷺ?
Yeah, subhanAllah.
You know what I mean? So if you think like that, you start to sort of paint a picture a little bit of things that you would do in front of the Prophet ﷺ and things you won't do, or in front of your mother, to say. And how would it be if you had the Prophet ﷺ, your mother, and let's add your wife in, because sometimes people's wives are super critical, so sometimes that's good. But if you were to do that, would you be encouraged to do it? The answer would be no.
But boys are going to be boys, right?
Boys are going to be boys.
How do we let exert or express that? Boys are going to be boys. They're going to let it out, right?
I think it's got to be redirected, bro.
Has to be, yeah.
Yeah, like I told the brothers, like, bro, you want to have that? There's no bigger adrenaline. You can dump a car and do a burnout. That's not going to beat you jumping on a horse, being trained on a horse.
Yeah.
And galloping. Nothing's going to beat that. That experience. You want to be hectic and shoot guns? Go do archery, and see how good of a target shooter you are. You know what I mean? You have to pull back the bow. You have to show your strength. You know what I mean? It's just releasing that energy.
And I think the way we live, the way we live today, there isn't a natural, default, healthy way to diffuse a lot of the stuff that's being built up.
Yeah.
You're working. If we're supposed to be working physically. If you're behind it, I can't sit. Like after 10, 20 minutes, I get up and go to the kitchen. My wife looks at me. She goes, "You're already off the chair. I can't sit in front of a computer for extended period. But tell me to dig a hole. I'll dig a hole for 10 hours. I can work with my body, no problem. Training, I can work. Subhanallah. So there isn't a lot of things that I think we can naturally de-stress or release the testosterone that built the frustration or all of these things that need to be released. And I think that's another reason why a lot of there's higher suicide for men than it is for women. They put that to the lack of resources for men to deal with the stresses of these days. Back then there was. You wanted to go get water, you actually had to go and exercise and go get water and food and hunt. And so there was a lot of default or natural things in the way you lived that were able to help you.
Too busy trying to survive.
Too busy trying to survive. And those things were healthy, subhanAllah. Yeah, so these days there isn't. So how do you stay humble and you stay in control, but then you exert all of these things in a healthy way?
A lot of the mental illnesses of today, Some psychologists and others, they link them back to, like they say, for example, ADD is not a condition. ADHD and ADD, well, they're not conditions. They're byproducts of people that are supposed to be hunters. So let's say you had a village, right? The ones that we're saying they're ADD today, they're the ones that actually go out and hunt. Hyperfocus, that's one of the traits. A large explosion of energy. So if they're all of a sudden hunting and then they have to run after. Strength, you find them that they're very strong. And the traits, similar traits, right? The farmers, they're the ones that, we could say this person's autistic, right? Think about the farmer planting crops by himself. He's not a very social person. He's not supposed to be a social person. Can you imagine hanging and talking all day? His job is just to plant rows. That repetitive. And that's what they're good at. They're good at repetitive tasks, and they're very smart. They see things. They can look at the ground and see which way the water is going, which way the water needs to flow. Look at the sky. Is it going to rain? It's not going to rain. Right? They pick up on these things. But they're able to do set tasks and perfect, do you know what I mean? Those type of tasks. So they said, like, things that we point out today don't exist in a village. No one in a village looks at a kid and says, you know what, that kid is a bit like thing. He must have. He goes, send him out for the hunters. That kid, send him out to the farmers. That kid, he's the arts and craft guy. You know what, him, he's the builder. You know what I mean? Oh, the tall one, send him on the front line. You know what I mean? Send him to training.
It's an interesting concept. I never thought about it.
They put them into. That's why I see people with flat feet. I tell them, if you're in the vineyard of Lebanon, you know what your job would be? Hey, like, I go, you'll be the one squashing the grapes. The one at the village. But they would look at how they are, and they would assign a skill according to, you know what I mean, that type of...
In the environment that exists around them, where they're going to be best suited.
I saw a video of a child that has autism that was drawing something. He looked at something, and like photographic memory, he drew it. He drew it on all the walls of his house. For hours, for days.
SubhanAllah.
I said, you know what? They're the people, the hieroglyphs in Egypt. That's them. They're chiseling away for hours and days. You think, how do they do it? But because we're not in the same
mindset, vibration level that they're in,
mindset of them. Over here, for example, a scholar or a sheikh sitting for the whole day, reading the whole Quran or 10 juz of the Quran in one go. You know what I mean? Different mindset. Different type of people. Intelligence is not necessarily, we look at it like a suit and a tie. That's not necessarily intelligence. Even the Prophet ﷺ, when he saw them with the date palms, pollinating the date palms, he said, what are you doing? Maybe you shouldn't do that. And then next year there was no dates. He said, what's wrong? He said, Rasulullah, you told us not to do it. He said, this is not my field. He said, I made a comment, it's not my field. This is your specialty. You know what I mean? The artificial pollination of date palm trees to make the crops like grow.
Because male or female,
He goes, that's your specialty, not mine, you know. I'm a prophet, but you guys are experts in this type of stuff. And the people of Medina were known to be in agriculture. So what I'm saying is that you look at the person and then you say, okay, this is what he's good at, and you assign the task. You know what I mean? These is the other way around. We're not assigning tasks according to people's mindset, mental state. We're saying, okay, this is what you have to be.
You know what it is? I think
but they can't be that. Yeah, if that makes sense.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, we've because I think education has shifted so much. And I remember watching a video about what people are exposed to in terms of information and education in the last 100 years versus the last 500-600 years, and even prior to that. What are the key priority? Like now it's medicine, right? If you're a professor in medicine, it's like you're the you know.
Yeah, and then
or-
it works down from there. Yeah,
Correct. So whereas before it was theology, it was like, you know, ai it was scholars, it was
language.
it was around language. So it was around the why more so than about the how. These days it's all about the how. So, you know, you get too involved in the how and the what, right? But we forget the why. And if you understand the why, then the rest is kind of not irrelevant, but
and you find it was second nature too. Like some of these people, like if we wanted to take example, the Greeks, the Roma, the statues and stuff, the details of it was second nature to them. They didn't look. I don't think they really looked at it and said that's a work of art. They looked at it like it's just normal. Like,
Yeah.
we do this every day. It's nothing.
yeah.
We look at it like wow, how they do that? But yeah, that's normal.
Mm.
Because like I said, you're right. We moved away from that.
Yeah.
Like how did they build that? What do you mean how they built it? Human beings, if they want to do something, they will achieve it. They're very smart. They're very intelligent. But how they make these pillars, or how do they do this, or how do they carve out of, you know what I mean? All these things. We said easy. They got the right people for the right job. For us, we're forcing people. Like we always said, Nadal always said, look, not everyone can be a sheikh. It's true. It takes a certain type of character, certain type of person, certain type of mindset for a person to become a sheikh. Now, I have to bring up this story because it was actually a funny story. We were once listening to the South African sheikh, right? He was from South Africa, and he was giving a talk to us. And he's a sheikh, like a qualified sheikh, and he said, you know, in South Africa, if someone's not smart enough to be a doctor or an engineer, and he doesn't get good grades, his parents, and the child's struggling, and he's not that intelligent, they send him off to become a sheikh.
To a madrasa.
To a madrasa. And we're all looking at him saying, you just
You just put us all
you just hammered yourself. Like, he's trying.
He's into him,
He didn't think about it much. He's trying to give an example,
Yeah.
right? He's trying to say like, Islam should be first.
Yeah.
You should want your child to be a sheikh, a scholar, a alim, a hafaz. That should be priority, not as a we got nothing to do. What are we going to do with
It's a
this?
secondary, yeah.
But when he was saying it, everyone was looking at him like, "Say,
وانت شو صار لك؟ Yeah.
But it's true. It's the reality. It's like if someone's this, someone. No, I know of a young girl that we used to know. She got into medicine. After 6 months, she left, and she went to marketing and journalism, or something like that, something in the arts. Right? And her mum went crazy. Talked to her, speak to her. She got a doctor to speak to. And then doctor said it's not for her. She doesn't want it. She can't see blood. She can't see this. She doesn't want to deal with people. She says it's not her. She likes to write.
Expressive and artistic.
You know, yeah. That's not her. Don't force her to be something. She doesn't want to be busted. She was so proud, but your daughter's gonna be depressed for her whole life. It's not her. So yeah, putting someone where he belongs.
And it's hard, like in the society, the way, you know, with the structure today, it's very difficult. Like it takes a village to raise a child, right? And a village has all aspects of, you know, a community needs. And when we talk about mental health, and I used to say this quite often, is, you know, why don't we have mental health issues like in Lebanon or in you know, countries where there's a high psycho-social environment? It's because healing is naturally built within the structure of society. So by the time you get from your 5th floor down to the shop to buy labna and zaytun and whatever it is you need, by the time you get back home, you've said salam to 5-6 people, 2 people invited you over, you're met with the neighbor, khalas, whatever, you're outside of your head now.
Everyone's smiling at you.
Everyone's smiling at you. You're immersed in an environment, your mind full of another environment outside of your thought process and outside of your own, you know, prison kind of in your mind. And that's the way we live today. We're isolated. We're always, you know, subhanallah, and that's one of the biggest benefits of praying in Jama'ah. No matter who, like, you know, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that opportunity to continuously do that, because I really think that's, especially for men, we need that, man. We need that because it gets you out of your head. I've experienced it so many times, and we know it's khair for us, you know it's good for you, and you know, and yeah, so I think.
So what's advice to give the brothers? Like, what's the best people that are stuck in this loop, or stuck in this sort of
Salat in Jama'ah on time at the masjid, there is nothing like it, subhanallah. There is nothing like it. And talk. Go to the shore of the ocean, walk on the sand by yourself, and scream and yell, and if there isn't any close trusted source that you can vent to and release to without, go barefoot on the ocean, be grounded. There's a lot of charge that we carry along, and this is scientifically proven. We need to be barefoot on the ground to get earthed. Really, if you don't put your hands and feet and your forehead on the ground, if you're not earthing yourself, you have to do that. And salah again, that's exactly what it does.
I think people complicate it. It's actually quite it's not as complicated. You connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Connect back with your Lord. What are you gonna, if you don't have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
The problem is we forget who Allah is. We forget to look up. We're constantly trying to look for the answer here, where it's nature, it's human nature. If you've never had a relationship with Allah, if you've never had a relationship with your Creator, if He hasn't necessarily provided you with things outside of your understanding, and you've had that wow factor and that sweetness of Iman, it might not be your second nature to reach out there, but speak to someone, and your Creator is your Creator, man. Like every day, subhanAllah, feeds you, sustains you, keeps you going. But yeah, I think for me, what works for me every single time is salah in the masjid. Gets me out of my head. And every time I do it, I feel so much better, and it's like my therapy session. That's my therapy session.
There's not more than that, you can say.
Look, there's complex issues, and people have complex issues, and people have complex trauma, and I'm not disregarding the therapeutic interventions that exist out there. I'm not denying that at all.
But start with the main fault, which is connecting back with
your Creator. A brother of mine said this beautiful analogy, and I'll always remember this, and inshallah I won't say much after this, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rahman and Ar-Rahim. And we know obviously the parable between the womb and the word Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. And just the other day I watched a lecture around the difference between Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and the verb, and like the Rahman is the here and the now, that the one that provides instantly, and the Rahim is the continuous aspect of the word, linguistically speaking and all of that. But this brother was saying that as soon as we leave the mother's womb, we literally detach from that Rahim. Literally we detach from that Rahim. And for the rest of our lives, we are trying to long for a sense of connection and bond again. We're trying to survive in this world, literally, and we long for that sense of connection. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Like Allah described Himself with these two beautiful words, that the ultimate connection that's going to keep you content and confident and humble and gives you sweetness of existence is that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we are Bani Adam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how He created us, and that's why He has mercy on us, because we forget. Nasiya Adam, So I think that it's very, very important to understand that we long for this connection. And if you're not connecting to Allah, you're connecting to either women, you're connecting to drugs, you're connecting to lifestyle, to ego, to wealth, to social status, to whatever it is. We need a sense of connection. We have to have that. And if you're not getting it from the most healthiest of sources, you're going to be sure you're going to get it from elsewhere.
SubhanAllah. And if you look at it like that, it should encourage you even more to.
Yeah, subhanAllah. So we're not denying and disregarding any intervention, They're all علم نافع. الله اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم نسألك علما نافعا, beneficial knowledge, and to benefit us with that knowledge that He provides us, and continuously to provide us with beneficial knowledge. There's reasons why we make this dua, and all of these interventions are healthy interventions. But if for us, for believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the day and the akhirah, and al-qada wal-qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi, the decree, the good and bad, these are all aspects of Iman. And for me as a believer, I need to have those elements at the forefront of my therapy, for me. And then comes everything else. But everything else aligns with that, because it's harm prevention. Like you said, it's about harm prevention. It's about motivational interviewing. It's about being strength-based. The Prophet ﷺ was the best therapist that ever existed. We look at different aspects of his interactions with other companions and how he used motivational interviewing, how he was person-centered, how he was strength-based. You know, he was always validating, he was always encouraging and motivating, never put anyone down, never attacked anything about the person, always looked for the strength and motivated. You know, that's the best sort of therapy that, you know.
Allah Zik al Khair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Wihakum, inshallah.
Sort of coming up to wrapping up time. Is there anything else you want to add, inshallah?
Like you said, I think know your limits. And I did actually write this here about quota and burnout. It's very important because I think once that happens, that's when you start to reach out to something else or someone else or something else. You know, be your physical quota throughout the day, so social quota, your emotional quota, psychological quota. So, like I said, I think Jazakallah khair for bringing that up. I think know your limits.
Inshallah.
Yeah, be aware, know your limits.
Do you want to give a shout out to Mohamad Khadar?
Where are you at, bro? Come and see. Yeah, I miss you, subhanallah. I did, yeah.
So when's the last time you here? It's been a while?
Yeah, it was in Lebanon, Madrasat Iman actually. A long
You're
time
talking
ago.
like what, 30 years?
Yeah, yeah. Before 90, no, hang on. 94, we went to South Africa. And I was there till 98, 99. Any before 94.
SubhanAllah, al-ayyam. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So the shout out will reach him, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Allah Zik al Khair. Mohamad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and your efforts, inshallah, in trying to benefit and help the ummah, especially with this very important mental health, drugs and rehabilitation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. For our listeners, Jazakumullah khair. Until we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.